when I was 2 weeks into my first job as a 16-year-old at a smoothie establishment that should be known to NBA fans. We were robbed. It was late, and my coworker's friends had been playing pranks on her all day, so when I saw someone burst through the door, I thought it was just that. Until, that is, I had something metal pressed against my back, and an arm wrapped around my chest. The robber gave the whole stereotypical give me all the money spiel, and ordered us to go into the back room, kneel down, and face the wall. As I was kneeling, and hearing him walking towards us, time seemed to slow down. Thankfully, I had been refilling juices whenever he came in, and so the door to the back room was partially blocked by a heavy cart. With whatever substance he was on, he wasn't coordinated enough to get past it to us, so he fled. He was followed by my coworker's husband and caught. When he was caught, they found an industrial-sized pipe wrench wrapped tightly in his fist so that he could get a stronger grip when swinging. I'm so glad that cart was there. Once a year or so, I would look him up in the parish prison roster to see if he was still in jail. One year, he suddenly wasn't. I later found him named in a lawsuit as having stabbed his cellmate a half-dozen times while the guy was asleep. Definitely doesn't seem like the nicest of people. 9 years later, I'm still unpacking this incident in therapy. It's why I don't like walking around cities at night or sitting where I can't see the door. Well, IDK if this counts as an attempt or not, but my wife, my kids and myself went to church one time and we ran into one of my wife's old flings. This guy followed my wife around and our daughter and kept trying to talk to them. So I confronted him about it and told him to back off. As we were leaving, he makes sure to yell across the parking lot telling my daughter goodbye. My wife forces me into the car and we leave. So I message the guy on Facebook to ask him what his problem is, and he tells me that my wife and daughter are his friends and I have no right to tell them who to be friends with. I told him again to back off or I would call the police. Fast forward a week, I worked every other Sunday. I get a call from the pastor saying that they had to call the police on the guy because he was causing drama looking for me. When they arrested him, he had a backpack with him that had a sawed-off shotgun, a meth pipe and some meth in it. Chilling with the brothers drinking at a park. As we drive off to leave, a car coming our way almost hits us. Driver obviously reacts like WTF, and I guess the other car noticed. They turned around and caught up to us at a stop sign. Other driver asked if we had a problem. We told them stop driving like assholes. Then their back window rolls down and two guys in the back draw Glocks with drum magazines. We just kind of froze up at first, but then our driver pulled off hastily. Later found out those guys got arrested for shooting someone else that same day. That sounds like something straight out of Pulp Fiction. If you're from the area, rhyme from this will probably sound familiar. But I got absolutely blackout drunk at an end of the year / graduation party and ended up having to get taken home early. Later that night, another student at the party ended up stabbing and killing 5 people. Turns out he had mental issues, schizophrenia, and thought everyone at the party was a werewolf / vampire who threatened his life. He never went to jail, but ended up being found non-criminally responsible instead. Definitely remember this one. I live about a block away from where it happened. Terrible thing, I'm sorry you were involved. My dad was a meth addict. He did lots of fucked up things, dropping me off at trap houses to have sleepovers with other coke babies, living in a house full of animal shit and hoarding. He sicked his pit bull on a black child. He was a real fucking character. One night he came looking for my mom and I at our place. Mom wasn't there. Grandma was babysitting me. I was sleeping in bed when somebody started to try and open my window. It was locked, but they kept jamming something into the bottom to try and force it open. At the same time, I heard the living room door being tried by somebody else. My grandma snuck into my room in her nightgown, apparently woken up by the same thing, and told me say nothing. Don't even whisper. We laid under my bed while a group of men shouted for my mom to come out, slammed their hands on the windows to try and break them, and jumped on my grandma's car. She called the police and barely whispered into the phone. Eventually the cops arrived, and the men scattered. Long story short, my dad and his other meth head friends came to the house with guns and knives with every intention to kill me and my mother because she was going to get custody of me. If my mom wasn't so vigilant with locks, we had 3 different kinds on the front and back doors, we would have died. I was around 20 to 21 years old and walking home at about 3 AM after a night out, and I was absolutely plastered from drinking so much. I was about 200 meters from my house when a hooded figure jumped out from behind a bush and immediately had a knife pushing into my stomach as he grabbed my neck and tried pulling me in. Fortunately I was stronger and pulled away. He went to lunge at me with the knife when suddenly he stopped, stared for what felt like an eternity, but was probably a second or two, and then said, "Holy shit Tracy, your spoon forward. I haven't seen you in so long, my bad mate," and then walked off like nothing had happened. I still don't know who he was to this day. And this is why you always treat others with kindness and respect. Never know when an old acquaintance might try to stab you for an unknown reason. In my late teens, I used to buy my weed from random dudes in the projects, low income housing. One day we gave some money to a guy named 40. He took it and went inside one of the buildings. We waited in the car for several minutes. We started to think he had taken our money and left. Right about that time, a car full of coked up white dudes pulled up beside ours. Apparently my friend owed them money. They pointed a gun at him and said that if he had enough money to buy weed, then he could pay them back. I really thought they were going to shoot us and just drive off like it was nothing and I hadn't even done anything wrong. I thought I was gonna pee my pants. Right about that time, 40 came back out with our weed and an even bigger gun. He scared them away and then we went back to his apartment and smoked a blunt. What a good man. Turns out he was only selling weed because he had a 6-year-old daughter and that was the only way he knew to give her a better life than he had. I babysat his daughter occasionally for the rest of that summer. I really hope she got a decent childhood and that her dad stayed safe and out of jail. TLDR, almost got shot, but was saved by a random drug dealer who turned out to be a decent fellow. I was out with a few friends, and with us was a girl that had just broken up with a psychopath. We didn't know he was a psychopath. We found out that night. We were just walking back home from a restaurant. It was about 1 AM, and the guy came running out of nowhere. I don't know how he knew where, and went to meet us. He ran to the girl, lifted her shirt up, and stabbed her in the gut, literally splitting her belly open like a fish, and then ran off. This whole thing happened really quickly, so we were all in shock. The girl was holding her own intestines in her hands, and she was so shocked that she didn't even seem scared, wasn't screaming or anything. She just stood there. We called an ambulance and they managed to somehow put everything back and sew her up. This happened about 3 years ago, and she still has pretty serious problems with her digestive tract, can't eat certain things and that kind of stuff. That image of her just standing in the middle of the pathway holding her own guts will remain stuck in my head forever. The guy got 13 years in jail BTW. Edit. Now that I think about it, a big part of why they broke up was his constant abuse towards her weight. She wasn't even fat, just a bit on the chubby side. I wouldn't even call that overweight, but he would always tell her that she had a big gut. That was almost an obsession for him. So maybe the fact that he stabbed her in the abdomen is a symbolic action of some sort. I don't know what was in that fuckhead's brain and I honestly don't even want to know. Walking home from my pregnant GF's house at the time. Honestly, it wasn't a bad neighborhood. Well, I'm walking basically just minding my own business. Past these guys, maybe 3 or 4 of them. They were heading the other direction on the other side of the street. Something told me to look back, and right as I did that, one of them had a gun pointed to the back of my head. I turned around fully, and was just like, yo. They were like, give us your money etc. I had a wad of dollars, and not sure if it was quick thinking, but I stuck my thumb in between the cash, pulled it out, and threw it on the road and it scattered. As they went to pick it up I bolted. These assholes chased me. I just ran to some dude's house who, luckily for me, he was cool, let me in, close the door, and called the cops. A few weeks later those same dudes were arrested for robbery and killing the person they robbed. These guys were from a neighboring neighborhood. So yeah. So the bit and binder method really does work. I posted this before. I still harbor a sickening fear when I'm over my head in water. Am now 77 yo. Repost. Attempted drowning in Lake Michigan by a mental patient on leave with family. I was 8. He lured me into deep water by throwing my sand shovel. He pushed me under. I passed out. He was noticed and seized. They did artificial respiration on me. Men on the beach. Many were medics. This close to end of WW2. Still very frightened of getting in over my head. I'm 75. That shit doesn't go away. Not sure if this counts, but I was a lifeguard on one of the local beaches. I was out patrolling in the truck by myself and got a call for a medical aid at one of the condos behind the boardwalk. I grab everything and head over. This is fairly unusual, but we do respond from time to time to stuff off the beach since we are closer and do what we can until medics show up. Knock on the guy's door, identify myself, and then enter residence. It's a younger guy, clearly on drugs, blood around the area of his wrists, and he's just looking at me dumbfounded. As I begin to ask him what the problem is, my supervisor walks in, grabs my shoulder, and basically pulls me out of the condo. Turns out this guy had called in about committing suicide and threatened to kill anyone that entered the residence. Obviously they shouldn't have sent me in there, and it ended up being a pretty big deal with people getting reprimanded for telling me to respond instead of waiting for police. I was pushed off a cliff by a former friend at his own birthday party. He was 14 and I was like 12. We were on a hike, just the two of us, and he took a detour and we reached a steep cliff and he just up and pushed me off. I caught onto a tree root that was jutting out. There was a big tree growing right where I fell. The root grew in a way that part of it was exposed and made a surprisingly good handle. He didn't catch on and simply left me there. I was there for about an hour, if I had to guess, until someone else was alerted to my presence and managed to get me back up. I still have nightmares about it. I don't know why he did it, but he had been an insane asshole to me for a long time in retrospect. Edit. Nobody believed me when I told this to them, so he got off scot-free. I haven't seen him since, but I'm pretty sure he's still alive. What happened to the kid? He got in some kind of trouble, right? Some time ago, when I was like 14 years old, I found a second-handed guitar advertised online for a very cheap price. I went ahead and contacted the seller, who ended up being someone who studied in the same school I studied in. So I went to his house and found that the guitar had no strings, which was not a problem to me, but we got to an agreement of him putting new strings on the guitar if I went with him downtown to purchase them, to which I said yes. We went downtown, got the new strings, and while getting back, a random guy approached us and started asking for money. I paid no attention, but then this random guy pulled out a handgun and pointed at us. He said that he was the guy in charge of the zone that we happened to be walking around, and that we must pay him in order to cross by. I was kind of in shock, but then the guy I was with, the guitar seller, started a discussion with the guy who had the gun, and while they were doing that, the seller told me to run, and with no doubt I started to run away as fast as I could right through the middle of a street and between running cars. Something obviously dumb, but I was in shock, so that was my reaction. I remember that, when I started to run, that guy still had the gun pointing at us, so while I ran I was weirdly expecting the sound of a shoot, but luckily that didn't happen. Edit. Changed fire gun to handgun. A customer pushed me onto a roller coaster track in the station. I work in a theme park. Luckily rides are covered in sensors, and I tripped one, which stopped the ride. Edit. I was not pushed in front of a train, nor was the intention to push me onto the track. I didn't press charges. There was no intention to actually have me dead. We took legal action through the business. Edit 2. This was over a height restriction. The dude's kid was too small to ride. Why did they do that? Do you know if there were any consequences? Serious. 3 men drugged me and kidnapped me. I woke up on a floor with one of them tearing my clothes off and my moon boot. Broken foot. I tried kicking him off with the boot, but he started knocking my head into the floor and I passed out. I woke up in daylight in a garbage bin, naked and in a pool of my own blood. I don't know how the fuck I got out of there or how I found the nearest policeman, but I then collapsed again. Woke up in a hospital with 52 stitches in my head and 78 in and around my vulva and breasts. Doctor said it was the worst rape trauma she ever saw. They say it's a miracle I'm alive and don't know how I did it. They were never caught. I'm a crisis, trauma and PTSD counselor now. They didn't win. Edit. Shit, I never thought I'd get a response like this. I woke up and thought my Reddit notifications was on crack. Geez guys, thank you so fucking much for the compliments and support. It's a bit overwhelming tbh, and I don't know what to say except thank you. You guys are amazing. Also, thanks for all the bling. That really wasn't necessary but so cool. Thanks. To clear up, I'm a woman and I'm married, and I posted in r/animalsbean derps a pic of my husband and doggo speak is encouraged, so the dad was referring to my husband. Lastly, to the people who say I'm lying or looking for attention, suck my metaphorical balls. Edit 2. Thank you once again. Hope you guys don't mind, but I printed the thread with all the amazing messages and I've added to my notice board. Serious. May 18th. 2018. School shooting at Santa Fe High School. I was a sophomore at the time. Don't really want to dive into the details, but I remember running through the grass thinking that they were shooting into the crowd of kids running. Scariest moment of my life, but at least I'm here for the 1-year anniversary of it all. You always hear about it on the news, but when it actually happens in your school it changes your life. I hope you are doing good now. I'm very sorry that happened to you. My brother has BPD and is totally incapable of controlling his emotions. He saw red and came at me with a steak knife and stabbed me several times in the neck. I guess I was lucky in that most of the stabs glanced off me as I was protecting myself with my arms. He didn't really strike any clean shots where it could have caused me to bleed seriously, but he wasn't really aiming. A few inches to the left and he could have hit a major vein. I knew someone who had this exact same situation happen, only she wasn't so lucky. Her brother came at her with a kitchen knife in the morning before they were supposed to leave for high school. Her mom was getting ready, and when she came down to the kitchen to see what the noise was about, it was too late. She says she lost both her kids that day. Posting for my dad. I'll call him John. He grew up during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and at the time there were numerous tit-for-tat shootings between Republicans and Loyalists. My dad was walking home when a car pulled up quickly, and men with masks, bats and guns jumped out. He started running, but they caught up with him. Just as they got to him they stopped, and one pulled off his balaclava and said, "Oh shit John, didn't realize it was you. Thought you were someone else, we're so sorry." He said he genuinely thought he was about to die there and then, and if he had have been someone else he would have been. I was 3 years old. It was actually my first memory. My father was drunk and blaming me for all his problems and pointing a rifle at me. My mother talked him down from it. He has zero recollection of the event because he was so drunk, but I remember it clearly. And I tell my mother that I didn't remember it. Only person that knows is my wife. Thanks for watching, and remember to like the video, share, and subscribe to our channel.